Hey friends, Opal Annie here. Welcome to the Antoinette stocking tutorial. If you don't already have your pattern, hop over to my Etsy shop. It's Opal Annie 71 on Etsy. Grab your pattern. I'm going to put a link down below so you can find it easier. Once you get your pattern, you'll see that you have two PDFs included. One is the instruction PDF, the other is the pattern PDF. The pattern PDF is 25 pages, but don't freak out. You don't have to print all 25 pages, thank goodness. Based on your options that you choose, you're going to print anywhere from 5 to 8 pages. On page 1 of the instructions, it's going to have a chart, and it's going to tell you exactly which pages you need to print and how you're going to tape those pages together. So it makes it pretty easy for you. Now, what are your options? What do you get to choose from? Well, the Antoinette stocking has two lengths. You have a knee length version, you have a thigh length version. It comes in 3 sizes that range from a woman's size 6 to a woman's 11.5, and it comes in 2 widths, a regular width and a wide width. So look at that chart, look at the options that you have, pick which is best for you, and print only those pages. So the next thing we need to talk about is fabric. It's best if you have a 4-way stretch knit, which a 4-way stretch knit is it just means that it stretches in all 4 directions. You got stretch this way and you've got stretch this way. You also want to have a knit that has good recovery, which that just means that when you stretch it, it pops back. It recovers to its original shape. You also want a knit with a 50% stretch. What that means is it's going to stretch at least 50% further than its original shape. So if you have like a 4-inch section, that 4-inch section is going to stretch at least to 6 inches. That way you have enough stretch. Now you can use a two-way stretch. This is a 2-way stretch. I fell in love with this fabric, so I wanted to try it. The 2-way stretch just means that it's going to stretch just in one direction. If I turn this one this direction, I literally have no stretch. If you use a 2-way stretch fabric, look at your pattern pieces. There's going to be an arrow. When you lay the pattern piece on your fabric, just make sure that that arrow is pointing in the direction that your fabric stretches. Another thing to keep in mind with the 2-way stretch versus the 4-way stretch is that the 4-way stretch, this is a 4-way stretch. These come all the way up to my knee, as you can see in the pictures. This one, it does not. I wear it kind of squashed down around my ankle, but that's how I like it. But it doesn't, because it doesn't have that stretch going up the leg. I mean, when I lay them out, they're cut the same, but this one has no give in that direction. So if you use a 2-way stretch and you want it to come to your knee, you may need to add a couple of inches length to the top of your stockings, and then try them on before you put the cuff on or the elastic, and make sure that, you know, if they're too long, you can trim off a little bit. You can't always add more, but you could trim down some. So just keep that in mind. With the 2-way stretch, it's not going to stretch up the leg like the 4-way will. So since we were talking about elastic, that's another option. The first version has a cuff. It's just a knit cuff. The fabric's doubled over and made a little cuff. This is really sturdy. On the knee highs, I only do the cuff. I don't put any elastic in them. I think this is the most comfortable way to wear them, and I don't really have any problem with them slipping down. They fit well. On the knee highs, however, I prefer to have elastic. And the elastic I use, this is just a 1-inch braided elastic. It's my little package. And I think the 1-inch wide works best, or I mean something close to that, probably 3/4 1.5 even. I don't think I'd go that thick, but that's up to you. I just think if you have a really narrow elastic, the narrow band is going to tend to want to like dig into your skin more. So for me, the 1 inch seemed the best option. Other supplies that you're going to need would be just your basic sewing supplies. Get you some pins. I will say I'm not a big rotary cutter fan, but when cutting the knit fabric, I prefer the rotary cutter. It seems to be able to, I can get a straighter cut with it. You also are going to need a marker or chalk or whatever you usually use to mark your patterns with. This is just a Mark Be Gone disappearing ink pen, because on the sole, on the heel, and on the toe, you're going to have, and this pattern I've used it quite a bit, so it's kind of wrinkled, but you're going to have these little marks, one for each size. And these marks at the toe, this is the sole, so you have 2 at the toe, you have 2 at the heel, and then on the back piece you have 2 at the heel, and then on the stocking front you're going to have 2 at the toe. You need to get those marked onto your fabric, because that's going to help you line up those toes and heels when we go to start sewing things together. So some sort of marker. I think that's it. I think we're ready. I guess I'll mention that the pattern itself only has 4 pieces. You have the sole, you have the front of the stocking, and of course this is the knee length. You have the back of the stocking, and then you have the cuff. If you are doing the elastic version, like the knee length with elastic, you may or may not want the cuff. That's up to you. The cuff is the only piece that's going to be cut on the fold also, so keep that in mind. And I think we're ready to sew, so I'm going to change the camera angle and we'll show you how this works. Okay, we are back and ready to start sewing this stocking together. So the first thing you're going to do is take one of your sole pieces and take one of your back pieces, and make sure you've got your marks on there at the toes and the heels, those little slash marks that we talked about earlier. Make sure you have that on there. You're going to lay your back piece out. Now I'm sewing the knee high here. The thigh high is sewn exactly the same way. So you're going to lay your heel on top with right sides facing and matching your marks at this heel section. Matching your marks. And you're going to want to pin it only between these 2 marks around this back heel section, because we're only going to sew from this mark around the heel over to this mark. And make sure that when you start and stop that you put a locking stitch there. So pop some pins in here like so, and you may want to use more or less. I'm not a really big pinner, but on knit I do tend to pin a bit more. So that's that. You've got your back piece, your sole, right sides together. You've pinned between the marks around the heel, and we're going to stitch this section. As far as stitches go, I like to use, you've got to use a stretch stitch because you are working with a knit fabric and you want it to maintain its stretch. But I like to use a straight stretch stitch. You can serge this. I found just in my opinion, the serged edge makes it a little bit bulkier when you wear them. So I prefer just to do a straight stretch stitch and then leave these edges raw. They're not going to unravel or anything like that. So that's the most comfortable way for me to do it. But again, you're free to do it however you choose. But so we're going to stitch from mark around the heel to mark. And once you've done that, move that out of the way, you're going to have something that looks like this. And so you can see your little foot. Of course, I've got it inside out, but your little foot, and then coming up the back of your leg, starting to take shape. So you're going to want to lay this down for our next step. Lay the back down, have the heel pointing in the direction of the sole. So the heel is tucked under the sole right here. And we're going to do that because we're going to have to talk more about where this seam comes in and how this top piece is going to connect. So this is how you want to lay it out. And then you're going to take your front, and again with right sides together, you're going to lay it on top. Match your marks down here at the toe, like so. And match this one. And then one at the very end. And then what I like to do, like once I get the toe section stable, I'll come up here to the top and I'll go ahead and pin this top edge and then pin the rest in between. I just make sure, you know, that just helps me to make sure I have everything lined up as best I can. So I'll put that one there. Put a pin in here. Now when you pin this area where your seam is, you are going to want to, I put a pin right there. You know, I know you can't see that, but right where I feel that seam underneath, I put a pin right there. And I'm going to talk about sewing that here in just a minute. But one other thing that I need to mention is, you probably can't see it, but the front of the stocking is actually wider than the back of the stocking right here through the ankle. That's because the front of your ankle is a little bit further around than the back around the back of your ankle. So that's intended to be that way. So what you need to do is you're just going to just kind of pull your fabric up in the middle, because you're going to want these sides to line up. So you're going to have a little bit here in the middle that's going to be the excess. And again, we're going to put this pin right here where that seam is, and then go around the rest of it. So we'll put some here, put one here. Straighten things back out along this edge. And again, I'm going to have to pull it up in the middle a bit just because my edge over here, to get it to match up. So we have that extra fabric in the front of the ankle, which is going to be this poofy part you see here. Put a pin here, and we'll say one more over here. So once you have this all pinned, like so, when I sew this, we're going to be sewing around this whole entire outer edge all the way back up. Okay, but when I sew, I always sew with the heel, like I'm going to put this in my machine like this so that I can see the heel. The heel is towards me, because as we come down this edge, I'll start up here, I'm going to sew down. When I get to here, right where I can see my other stitching, I need to sew right across that stitching. But I don't want to catch this whole heel flap. So I sew all the way up to here, and then I stop with my needle down, and I'm going to gently pull this over to the side. You're going to catch some of this, this edge here, but you don't want to catch like the whole entire heel. So again, stitch down right up to where you're stitching from the heel area is. Pull the heel off to the side, stitch all the way around the toe, and then when you come back up this other side again, you want to lift your heel up, stitch up right to where the heel connects, then pull the heel off to the side, and then stitch across, and then come all the way back up to the top of the stocking. And once you have done that, you will have something that looks like this. You have the front, you have the back where you have the heel and the sole. Now you are ready for the cuff. This, again, this next section is going to be if you're using the cuff. If you're not using the cuff, you can fast forward here a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to do the elastic. But for the cuff, you're going to take, we're going to set you aside for a minute. Take your cuff piece, and you're going to want to fold it in half, matching the notches with the right sides facing. So we're going to fold it in half just like so. Pin it. And then you are going to stitch this edge where the notch is. Just run you a stitch right down here. Okay? Once you've done that, you're going to have something like this. And we are going to open this up. Another thing I like to do, I will open it up like this, and I'm going to cut my little notches off. And then I just kind of finger press this seam open. I mean, you can put it on your ironing board if you want to. I just kind of finger press that seam open. And then we're going to fold this in half again to form the cuff. So I just fold that up there and hold on to it. It's always kind of fiddly. So bear with me here, especially with this stretchy fabric. So there we have it. We're just going to fold it in half like so. So you've got a folded edge here, you've got your raw edge here, and your seam is lined up here. If you want to baste this, you can do so. I don't. That's just up to you. You could go ahead and pop this on the machine and baste around that edge. But the next step that we're going to do is to attach this. So we are going to turn our stocking right side out. And as you're doing so, again, these seams, I just kind of give them a little finger press open like that, and flop this one over here and just kind of press on it there to get that seam open. And then turn your stocking right side out. Pull our little heel out. Ta-da! And we are going to get ready to attach this cuff. One other point to mention is that normally we don't think of socks as having right side, a right foot sock and a left foot sock, which these are exactly the same shape, but this cuff has a seam on one side. Just because I get kind of like funny about stuff like this, I make sure that I put the seam, like this is going to be my left sock. So when my foot is in here, this is going to be on, this seam on the cuff is going to be on the inside. On the other sock, I'll do it in reverse. If you don't care about stuff like that, you just take your cuff and put it on. I get kind of weird sometimes about stuff like that. But anyway, so we're going to take our cuff with our stocking right side out, and we are going to place this cuff over the end of our stocking like so, to where the raw edges are all meeting up right here. And I'm going to line the seam of the cuff up with the seam of the, I can't get my finger in there. There we go. Of the stocking. And make sure that seam's opened out. So let me see if I can get that where you can see it. So I've got the cuff and the stocking seams lined up, and I'm gonna pin that. And then come over here to this side. It's hard to do out on the table. Usually I have this like over in my lap. And you may just need to give this a little stretch, just kind of stretch it until it all lines up. And then there's my seam from the stocking. I'm going to put a pin there. And then just kind of go around. I usually just put one pin in the middle here, making sure that you've got all 3 of your raw edges up here. You've got the 1 raw edge from the stocking and then the 2 raw edges from the cuff. Make sure they're all lined up and gonna get caught in your seam. Put a pin here. Okay, so it should look something like this. So you've got your stocking, your cuff pinned on, and we are going to put this on the machine, and we're just going to sew around this edge to sew the cuff on. Okay? Once you do that, you will have this. So I've got my cuff sewn down now, and sometimes I will trim this, especially if it's a thicker fabric. I will trim this excess fabric down a bit. That's up to you. But all you're going to do from there is tuck that inside, and there, my friends, is your finished stocking. Ta-da! That's it. Simple, easy peasy. Now, onto the elastic part. So, and this one I'm going to demonstrate on the thigh high. So this is a thigh high I have constructed just like we did the knee high up until this point. Okay, everything except the cuff. So you're going to want to take a piece of your elastic, wrap it around your thigh, probably about 4 to 5 inches above your knee. And you want this to be snug. It doesn't have to be like super tight, but whatever's comfortable for you. Cut your elastic, and then you're going to want to sew it together. You can see I've sewn this one together to form a loop. And now we are going to attach this loop to our stocking. One other thing that I usually take into consideration is the heel, because I normally want this bulkiness of this elastic. It probably doesn't matter, but sorry, I think my camera thought I was being long-winded and it shut off on me. Anyway, here we are. We're back. So we're going to pin the elastic onto the stocking like so. We've got one side. I've pinned the other side. And then I usually will just put my fingers in here like this, and you're going to want to give it a little stretch, because my elastic it's not going to be too much different, because they both should be around about the same size as your thigh. But you can see there I've got a little bit, so you're just going to give it a stretch. And then I will grab the middle and put a pin there. And then do that again for this side. Just kind of give it a little stretch until I can get a hold of the middle there. Now this edge you're going to want to sew. I sew this one with the zigzag just because this is gonna turn down inside in a bit. So let's see. Let me show you what it looks like for sure. So you've got your stocking, you've got your elastic, you know, on the outside of the stocking with the raw edge matched up to the top edge of the elastic. Everything's pinned in place, and we're going to zigzag the elastic onto the raw edge of the stocking, going all the way around. As you stitch this, sorry, it's like Sally sells seashells by the seashore. As you stitch this, you're probably going to want to give it just a little bit. You don't have to like crazy stretch it, but you probably want to give it a little bit of tension to get your stocking to stretch all the way out. So stitch all the way around this edge, and once you do that, you will have this. So here's my stocking. I've got the elastic stitched only at the top edge, okay, going all the way around. And then you are going to want to turn your stocking right side out. Well, I almost knocked my scissors off. Okay, and it's going to look something like this. You've got your elastic inside. You are going to want to fold this elastic one time towards the inside. Okay, see, that's how it's sewn. We're going to fold it one time towards the inside, and that's going to be the outside. It's going to give you a nice finish on the inside. You're not going to have just your elastic there. And you want to pull this taut where the fabric isn't like real loose up here, but you don't want it stretched down too tight either. Just kind of where it naturally will want to fold, where it fits in there good. Put you some pins in here. I'm going to go around to this side, fold it in. Ow, I poked myself. Put a pin there. And then here at the seams, you can see this seam is lining up with the seam of the stocking down below. So I'm going to put me a pin there. And then one more on this side. Oops, I don't have my seam wasn't pressed down good. Okay, so fold that over where my seams match up. Put a pin there, and that's that. So now you've got the elastic turned inside, and you're going to take this to your machine. And I use a straight stitch here. You can use a zigzag, but I usually go back to that straight stretch stitch. And we are going to just simply sew right down the zigzag where we zigzag the top edge. We're just going to sew along this edge all the way around. And once you do that, voila, you have a completed stocking with an elastic band inside, and it's got really good stretch to that. I mean, really good like firmness to it. And that is all there is to this. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you make a million pairs of stockings. None of these use more than a yard of fabric, even on the thigh high. So find you some really cute 4-way stretch fabric and you can have the coolest socks in town. I might mention this pair with the netting. I put a little velvet heel on or sole on the bottom. It's so soft. So let your imagination run wild. Create, and have fun doing it. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.